Hi, and welcome to this latest immigration law update video. In this video, I carry on my series looking at the upper tribunal decisions for 2020. And we've been going through them month by month, and we've come to September 2020. As usual, I'll put the links and any head notes below this video, and my slides will be available on the Number 8 Chambers website. Now on Bailey, there is only one reported decision for September 2020, and that's the KAM decision on those of Nuba ethnicity from Sudan. Now, this country guidance was a long time in the making. The hearings were listed between May 2018 and October 2019. They were delayed because of the Home Office Joint Fact-Finding Mission report on Khartoum, and then the political developments in 2019, where we saw President al-Bashir overthrown in Sudan. And now we have it reported in September 2020. Now, the upper tribunal in this decision, they go through the background to the Nuba and those of Nuba ethnicity, and they look at the Nuba living in both in the Nuba region, but also in the greater Khartoum region, where they, along with the non-Arab Darfuris, it's estimated as many as 1 million or maybe even 5 million, some sources have said, living in that greater Khartoum area, and many live in shanty towns in an area called the Black Belt. They also look at the history of the conflict and then the recent events with the overthrow of al-Bashir and the so-called sort of peace process in Sudan. Now, whilst this country guidance does not look at the issues of the non-Arab Darfuris, we're going to see, as I come to the end of this video, there are some sort of prophetic signals within the decision of the direction of travel. But let's have a look at first what the country guidance in relation to the Nuba is. It says at paragraph A, and it's on your screen on my slides, an individual of Nuba ethnicity is not at real risk of persecution or serious ill treatment on return to Sudan simply because of their ethnicity, and that's wherever effectively they go, to the Nuba region, to the greater Khartoum area, or at the airport on arrival. A returning failed asylum seeker, so this is more general, including those of Nuba ethnicity, is not at risk of a real risk of persecution or serious ill treatment at the airport simply on account of being a failed asylum seeker. Then they sort of set out the political issues prior to 2019. So prior to the political developments in 2019, individuals who are at risk on return, whether at the airport or in Greater Khartoum, were those who were perceived by the Sudanese authorities to be a sufficiently serious threat to the Sudanese government to warrant targeting. The assessment of that risk required an evaluation of what was likely to be known to the authorities and a holistic assessment of the individual circumstances, including any previous political activity in Sudan or abroad, and any past history of detention in Sudan. Factors include whether the individual was a student, political activist, or a journalist, their ethnicity, their religion, in particular Christianity, and whether they came from a former conflict area, such as the Nuba Mountains. And now we have the sort of reflection on what's happened since 2019. So whilst the question of perception of political opposition underlying C above remains the same since the 2019 political developments, when assessing any risk to an individual now, the effects of the 2019 political developments are relevant and are likely to affect the Sudanese authorities' view of and attitude towards those who might be perceived as political opponents. Further, the 2019 political developments are likely to have greatly reduced the interest of the Sudanese government in suppressing political opposition by violent or military action. So this is sort of very much rosy view of the 2019 developments and saying it's greatly reducing the risk. Internal relocation to Greater Khartoum for a person of Nuba ethnicity must depend on an assessment of all the individual circumstances, including their living conditions, their ability to access education, healthcare, and employment. Despite the impoverished conditions and discriminations faced by the Nuba when living in the so-called Black Belt area of Greater Khartoum, relocating there will not generally be unduly harsh or unreasonable. So we can see that the upper tribunal's view is there's a greatly reduced risk, and internal relocation to this greater Khartoum area will not generally be unduly harsh or unreasonable. Now, what about the non-Arab Darfuris? Because most of the case law, this is the first country guidance on Nuba, as they say in paragraph 34, most of the case law has concerned non-Arab Darfuris. And at the moment, AA is good law that non-Arab Darfuris are at risk on return to Sudan. What did the upper tribunal say? Well, at paragraph 38, they say this: the CG decisions, therefore, in respect of non-Arab Darfuris, remain at present unchanged, if only because the tribunal has not yet had the opportunity to consider fully the position in Sudan following the recent changes. And they don't leave it there. At the end, they add a footnote at paragraph 251 and say this: our decision is solely concerned with the position of individuals of Nuba ethnicity in Sudan. We rejected earlier an argument based upon a reliance on the CG decisions dealing with non-Arab Darfuris. We've reached our conclusions based upon the evidence relating to the Nuba and not non-Arab Darfuris, but a broader contention was made before us. The position of the Nuba is the same as non-Arab Darfuris, i.e. all Nuba and non-Arab Darfuris are at risk in Greater Khartoum. We have rejected that contention in relation to those of Nuba ethnicity. We make no findings in relation to non-Arab Darfuris, and as we indicated above, nothing we said should be understood to undermine the existing CG decisions in respect of non-Arab Darfuris. And then they add this, here's the kicker: we would simply observe that if the comparison is maintained on the evidence we saw in relation to Nuba, it might well have implications for the assessment of the risk to non-Arab Darfuris on return. So if you're going to say the Nuba are in the same, and non-Arab Darfuris are in the same position, it may lead to a finding that non-Arab Darfuris are not at risk. There may be specific arguments in relation to non-Arab Darfuris which may show a continuing risk, and that's something that's going to have to be looked at in future country guidance. But you can see the direction of travel, this focus on the political developments in 2019, and I think if you've got a non-Arab Darfuri case coming up, you've got to be prepared to show that the country guidance is still good law, and perhaps address the recent political developments and how they may affect a non-Arab Darfuri from Sudan. So that is the one decision from September 2020. I'll be back with the next video in this series when they finalize the reported decisions for October 2020, but I hope that's helpful to you. Have a look at the links, as I say, below. Have a look on the Number 8 Chambers website for the slides. Thanks a lot.